All right, now we're into 2026, so let's kind of early stage beginning the countdown to the 100th Macy's Parade, shall we? Now, a lot of people were expecting me that I was going to do the what if video if I was going to choose who to perform for the 100th parade. That video has yet to been in development yet. I still haven't done, I have some ideas on it, but I have not started kind of production on this thing yet, because the thing is, I am focusing a little bit right now on the movie award season, but this was also an idea of a video that I also wanted to do, and this was kind of also, I would say, after I did that, probably the best video I did this past year with the one fact from almost every balloon in the parade, from 1980 through 2024. That was still probably one of my most achievement videos that it really kind of made me want to do Macy's parade content again, even though we are already past Thanksgiving, but still kind of technically in the holiday season, I would say, until January 11th. So we're kind of still in the Christmas season, even though I'm not wearing the Santa hat because it's not December anymore. But what this video is, as you can tell by the title, is what would be my wish list of characters that I would love to see as a giant balloon in future Macy's parades. Now, this doesn't regard, obviously with this year's upcoming parade in November. I'm specifically talking about any parades in the near future throughout somewhat, I would say, around the 2020s or so. Now, I was hoping I was going to plan to do, a top 10 wish list video, but I unfortunately only ended up with 8 choices on this lineup. So yeah, so I wasn't able to figure out a couple of 10 characters that I would love to see to become giant balloons, of course. Now, there is a kind of a bit of a rule on this, specifically how I had done this. The big rule is it could not be a character that has already become a balloon and requesting, a new version of them. I know a lot of people want to see, a new version of, Superman or Underdog, or even, I think we're going to expect probably a new version of Snoopy, I would assume. Probably, something maybe a celebration-themed Snoopy, I guess, for the 100th anniversary. I could see that happening from them. Or, a new SpongeBob balloon or something like that. Because you can tell that SpongeBob and Gary balloon, I can see almost from last year's parade, the fabric is kind of wearing out a bit. But this is only primarily focusing on characters that have never been balloons, and also it cannot be a character from, the same type of franchise, to be precise, that has been in the parade. So, for an example, if you want to say somebody Pluto, for an example, from Mickey Mouse's gang, I cannot say that, or, I would say also for, another Paw Patrol character, for an example, or Grimace from the McDonald Land era of representing for McDonald's or something like that, or having a new Lucy of the Peanuts gang, or another Pokemon like Meowth, for an example. Those characters will, it cannot be a character that is from the same franchise from a previous character, or so, specifically like that. I might be technically cheating on one of them, even though, because it's kind of part of the same, universe franchise, but when you kind of separate them, they're kind of on their own. And also, it has to be a character that is very, very relevant, I would say. So, unfortunately, I will not, put any characters that are not kind of very relevant to the state and age. Say if you wanted a balloon of Steven of Steven Universe, for a good example, I don't think the show is very relevant. I don't think there's, a new show going on. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's not been very relevant. So I am not going to do something like that of a character that has not been, appearing a lot on television or a lot of films recently. Or, for an example, I would say even, Dory of Finding Nemo, or Marlin and Nemo, for an example. And that's another example. So yeah, there were a couple of things I was considering in this. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but it's just basically, it cannot be a character from the same franchise that a character has already been a balloon, and it has to be a character or characters that has to be very, very current in today's fields. And with that, let's get into what I say would be the 8 biggest wish list characters that I would love to see as giant balloons in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So, starting this up at number 8, as many of you all know, we are in right now the kind of almost the beginning of the end of football season. Like, high school already ended around the time around during late Thanksgiving into early December for some people for state and playoff finals. College football season's about to come to an end, and right now we're just in the almost to the final weeks, last 2 weeks, I believe, for college football. And we have just entered now into the playoff season for NFL football as we just finished the regular season. So now, I know NFL has participated in the Macy's Parade courtesy of a float before in the mid-2000s. But when it comes to specifically mascots, I would say, when it comes to the National Football League, a lot of them are not really that popular in terms of, like, famous ones. Say, for an example, like, unlike other sporting events, like the MLB, for an example, like the Philly Fanatic or Mr. Men. And I almost considered an MLB mascot on this lineup, but I only had decided to choose one sports mascot on this one. And I think with everyone, obviously, when it comes to Thanksgiving, when they think of Thanksgiving, other than this parade, they think of course, turkey and the meals, family, Christmas, shopping, obviously Black Friday, and even though that kind of goes around shopping, and of course the American sport of football, whether it be a college football game during Black Friday, or of course NFL, especially if you go to the NFL football Thanksgiving games in Detroit or with the Detroit Lions, or Dallas with the Dallas Cowboys as always, or whatever prime time game that is going to be on that night. So I knew I had to do, like, if the NFL would come back to the parade, they would have, like, maybe a float, but maybe one of the NFL mascots would be considered a giant balloon. And I already had the idea of who I had decided to choose, because this character has been named a lot of the times, maybe many people consider him the fan favorite mascot of the NFL, even if you're not a fan of that specific team. But he has been a very social media icon, I would say, in the realms, especially if you go to the stadium in Indianapolis. If you're representing the opponent's team, be alert, because he might pie you. Yep, at number 8, I am going with the horse mascot of the Indianapolis Colts, who's been named the NFL Mascot of the Year, Blue. Not because it's my favorite color, but blue is a very interesting character, obviously, because this character has really evolved throughout social media in the last few years, especially this whole pieing thing. And obviously, as you've seen, he has been a very iconic character, of course. Even when during off season, obviously, this character is very unique. And obviously, the costume of the character had a massive redesign recently. And although the Colts have been eliminated from the playoffs, but they had a very notable season, not just with their mascot, but with the new owners of the daughters of the original owner, the 3 daughters, taking over their father's footsteps after their father had passed before this past season. So I think blue really kind of makes the most sense, being a big social media star. And so if there is any NFL mascot that would be a giant balloon, it would be blue, and probably he would have a football in one hand and probably having a pie, which is nothing but full of shaving cream, on the other. At number 7, now this one could be an either-or scenario. It really depends, because I can't really consider both, so I would almost let the audience decide on this one. Now, last year we saw the Search of Mattress Sheep flow made its debut last year. And for those who don't know, the sheep characters are actually made by the animation studio known as Aardman from the UK. And obviously, Aardman is famous for 2 specific franchises they are big on. And this is where I kind of have the massive divisive which one you can go with. So this is more of an either-or scenario. So at number 7, it's either Wallace and Gromit or Shaun the Sheep. So I have decided to put this as an either-or scenario here, because as we saw last year, Wallace and Gromit made their massive return to the big screen / Netflix for the rest of the world with their second film, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. And, of course, Shaun the Sheep, who had been a very popular television star in the UK, starring in his own 2 movies, and is getting his 3rd one, another standalone sequel, a Halloween theme to be precise, from this iconic character spin-off of the Wallace and Gromit world where they speak no dialogue whatsoever. So having these stop-motion icons of British animation to represent as balloons in the parade. So, like, if you choose Wallace and Gromit, you can probably have them being ballooned in one of their iconic inventions, or maybe even on a little plane or something like that, or anything that's pretty unique of the characters, or even like a van or something like that. Like it, or just like whatever kind of transportation inventions they would do as a giant balloon would be something in putting the two who are riding it. And then for Shaun, it could just be like a generic design of Shaun. He might do something a little bit fun or something like that, but or I could see it like maybe like with the upcoming 3rd movie with the Halloween theming, they could do something a little spooky with Shaun, but I don't really know. But like since these 2 iconic British art icons from Aardman Animations had been a massive resurgence thanks to Vengeance Most Foul, of course, released last year in the upcoming 3rd Shaun the Sheep movie. I feel like maybe if Aardman would actually have a representation, it would be from either their iconic duo or their iconic sheep. That is not the Searcher Sheeps. Okay, so at number 6 here, now, as we have just saw last year, Pixar had brought Buzz Lightyear back to the parade as an all-new balloon for the celebration of the 30th anniversary of Toy Story and the upcoming release of Toy Story 5, which will be coming out this summer, even though some people are still wondering why they're doing it, because of Bob Iger's demands. Now, other than Toy Story, A Bug's Life is the only Pixar film that has represented in the Macy's parade. In fact, A Bug's Life was actually the first thing Pixar participated in the parade with that P.T. Flea circus float and the Heimlich the Caterpillar balloon, and then the Toy Story franchise with the first version and now the current version of Buzz Lightyear. I know some people would bring up Mr. Potato Head, but technically it's more the toy version of Mr. Potato Head and not the Pixar version that we've seen, the Don Rickles one, of course. I'm very curious who will be voicing Potato Head in the 5th one. I'm very curious. Now, when it comes to other Pixar big franchises, probably I would say their most successful franchise, other than Toy Story, has yet to be represented yet in this parade. I mean, they had 3 movies already, the second one being their worst film in their filmography, in Pixar's filmography. Just a couple of short-form series, a mini-animated series, and I've been hearing rumors, speculation, that there might be another series that might be coming from them, and a possible 4th movie that it's been very rumored, but obviously when you look at social media posts from not so great source materials that is not from a big Hollywood source like Variety or The Hollywood Reporter, especially when it feels like could be maybe just view-based or clickbait articles or stuff like that, or posts, especially on Instagram. I've seen that a lot. But I could see almost the world of Pixar's Cars somehow, some way could participate in this parade. Then their iconic race car himself, Lightning McQueen, at my number 6. So yeah, what was the 95 race car of Rusty's, if you go by the end of Cars 3, having the famous race car participate in the parade as a giant balloon seems interesting. Now, the thing is, whether A, would you do like Thomas the Tank Engine and make him a helium balloon, or would you try to do a best and do like a balloonical version? But the thing is, the character is very, very long. So if they do like something like a very creative way of having a double balloonicle of 2 utility vehicles underneath the balloonicle, that would be very interesting if they do the overachievement thing, but that might be difficult for, like, I would say the back driver then, because the front driver would be the one to control it, but they could be seeing both the cameras. It would be very interesting if the parade studio would have an idea yet to do a longer balloonicle of having 2 utility vehicles control the same balloon underneath it. And Lightning McQueen could be a possible candidate, but I think they could do like what Thomas, do a helium version of Lightning McQueen, and could be almost like in the same style design as Thomas, I would say, if Pixar would bring in the world of Cars to the Macy's parade, and Lightning McQueen the Ka-Chow Man himself, even though he doesn't say that anymore as he used to. I feel like if there's any Pixar representation of the parade outside of Toy Story and A Bug's Life, I think the world of Cars would make sense, and I would go with the 95 racer himself. At number 5, now this two iconic animated duo has been something I've always wanted to see in the Macy's parade. In fact, the first of two duos, to be precise, that is, like, I wanted to see when I was a kid. And obviously, Nickelodeon's only big representation they have had in the parade in recent years is SpongeBob SquarePants, of course. In terms of the main Nickelodeon route, not counting the Nick Jr. route, of course, like Paw Patrol, Dora, and Blue's Clues, of course. But the only time before SpongeBob that Nickelodeon was big on with their animated franchise were, of course, their big animated franchise at the time, Rugrats, and Jimmy Neutron. Now, you would think a lot of people would say, I would say Lincoln Loud, of the Loud House, but I have never seen an episode of the Loud House, and I know it's like their other big popular animated franchise going on right now, but I'm not really on the hunt on that one yet because I'm not really familiar with the franchise other than being it existed and it's on par with SpongeBob. But this other franchise is kind of on par, I would say, with so many attempted series they have done, even a recent live action and made a hybrid. But then they did another animated reboot series, and it ended up becoming so successful that what the franchise needed. And so, if you bring two magical little fishes and bring them, of course, out of their fishbowl, you, of course, got none other than Cosmo and Wanda of the Fairly Odd Parents. I've always wanted to see Cosmo and Wanda as a giant balloon in the parade. Like, you could almost do in the same veins, like, I would say the Christmas Chronicle elves, where you just have two novelty balloon versions of the duo and make them as one. Like, not together, but just, like, as separated, but just put them as one group together. Kind of also, you would say, even the Weebles, Tippy, Tooie, and Bumpus, for an example, or even the Blue Sky Gallery with Takashi Murakami's Kai Kai and Kiki. Yeah, so with the recent new Fairly Odd Parents animated series ended up becoming massively successful, what the franchise really needed after a long, long time, the most successful one critically, I believe, it really makes a lot of sense to bring what was the second most popular Nickelodeon show throughout the 2000s and kind of like their most biggest franchise they've been doing other than the Loud House in today's standards or Rugrats that would have a great participation in the parade. So if they would bring the Fairly Odd Parents to the parade, do, like, obviously two novelties of Cosmo and Wanda, or just, like in the levels of the Weebles or the Christmas Chronicle elves as one big giant balloon together. Okay, at number 4 here, this one I would say I'd be kind of cheating on this one, because this character is kind of in the same universe as a previous character that has been in the parade, but it's very interesting that this iconic character has yet to be a balloon in the Macy's parade. Now, obviously, there have only been legit 2 true superheroes in the Macy's parade that have ever been balloons. In the realms of DC, you have, of course, Superman. And in the realms of Marvel, you have Spider-Man. Now, which superhero in either of those particular comic book stars I am going with? Well, this one was kind of pretty easy for me, because not also that this character has yet to have a big representation in the parade in general, but I believe he is the only superhero character so far to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Yes, that's right, at number 4 is the Cape Crusader himself, Batman! Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist on that. Batman is my number 4. I think this just could be because I have been a little bit a fan of the Matt Reeves Batman movie that just came out a couple of years back in this decade, and I've also really enjoyed Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. But I think if DC ever wants to come back to the Macy's parade, instead of doing like a 4th version of Superman, why not bring the Cape Crusader to the parade this time? I know some people could also say the Joker could be the one to represent the Batman universe, because that would be very interesting concept. So you would not be wrong if you would choose the Joker instead. But if I would go with one character from the realms of the Batman universe, it would be Batman himself. I mean, I don't know how you would do a design on Batman specifically compared to like how the 3 versions of Superman that we have seen and the 3 versions of Spider-Man that we have seen. So you got to really have a very unique creative design for the Cape Crusader. I don't know how you would do it, because making a balloon of that character would be a little bit difficult to find a great design for the character. Maybe like one of his iconic poses, or maybe him using one of his iconic gadgets. I don't think like having him in a Batmobile balloon would just not be enough. If they would do like just a utility vehicle with a like the Batmobile coming in with the Cape Crusader in it, that would just be fine. But I would love to see Batman be a giant balloon, especially like with the recent reboot DC universe in the movies, and obviously with the upcoming sequel to the Matt Reeves film. And I think is there like a lot of video games and animated series that are still going on? I'm not really 100% familiar, but I'm just more familiar in the film side of Batman himself. So yeah, I think having Batman in the Macy's parade, if DC wants to come back to the parade, I think they would go with a big bang and bring in an iconic superhero character outside of Superman. Some people could say Wonder Woman. Some people could say Aquaman. It's a joke. But I think Batman would be the next candidate for a new superhero to join the roster. All right, at number 3. The top 3, I think I really want to see them to become giant balloons. But this other duo here at number 3, I've always wanted them to be a balloon, even when they were big during the early 2000s and to early 2010s, because they could really do a great design of the balloon of this iconic duo. And I would kind of almost say almost similar what Animat said in like his classic reviews he stated, but it's almost kind of like here in the Macy's parade. We had the boy genius of Cartoon Network as a balloon. We had the boy genius of Nickelodeon as a balloon. But I want to see the boy geniuses of Disney Channel to become giant balloons. None other than the iconic duo Phineas and Ferb. Yep, I have chosen them as my number 3 pick. I mean, they really would have been a great hit as giant balloons in the parade when the original show had run. And now with the show recently had got its revival last year and a potential another season coming in the way, I think it would be a great way, if they're going to add another season, to bring these iconic duo into the big skies in New York City. Probably like through a rocket ship or some unique, kind of similar to Wallace and Gromit, of a unique gadget, invention they would create and have them ride on it. And almost kind of a similar homage, I would say, to Pinocchio and the Shrek's onion carriage balloon. You would have Perry the Platypus hiding underneath the balloon or in the back of the balloon without the boys not seeing him. Almost kind of like in a special, almost kind of like one of Perry the Platypus's jets that he uses, and have Phineas and Ferb ride on it with Perry right underneath them. That would be just very creative. But yeah, with the show recently having its big revival release and how popular it was, I mean, I grew up watching the show on Disney Channel. I did watch a couple of episodes of the recent revival that aired on Disney Plus, or Disney Channel, but I saw them on Disney Plus. Yeah, like bring this iconic duo would make sense. I mean, it's very ironic that Disney Channel rarely represents a balloon at the parade, and the only time they ever done that was with JoJo of JoJo's Circus, and that was in the Playhouse Disney form. I mean, we didn't even get a parade balloon version of like Bear and Bear in the Big Blue House, Stanley, or Roly Poly Oly, or the Higglytown Heroes, or like, I know some people would bring up Winnie the Pooh, and that could be, I almost did consider Winnie the Pooh as a possibility, but I did not count him on this list. I thought of him, but it just might take a long time, but it might take a while for that silly old bear to become a giant balloon. But that could have been a possibility, but I didn't really thought of Winnie the Pooh as a balloon, but he could also fit in like the Playhouse Disney stuff, or Disney Channel of his animated shows, or like you can even say the same thing with Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, especially just right now with the remake being successful last year and an upcoming sequel. But like you could have also had like some of their regular animated stars like Kim Possible, or I forgot who the daughter is in the Proud Family. I forgot who she is. like any big animated star on Disney Channel or Disney XD or something like that, as they used to call it. I mean, yeah, with the fact that Disney Channel rarely does any promotion for their animated shows is for like something like this and making them giant balloons, I think Phineas and Ferb would be a fantastic candidate for a future balloon. At my number 2, now this one is a bit of an interesting one because I could see this one being kind of like with Baby Shark, Hopper Reel, and Dora, where it would be a combination of a mini float and a novelty balloon. But I'm going to mention only the balloon here. Now, if you were a kid, like myself, in the late 90s or early to mid 2000s, I think some of us had played a couple of PC CD-ROM games, which I have done myself. I think the ones I have remembered the most playing, I believe, was a Trivia Pursuit thing. I forget what other ones, like Clue Finders, I believe. I even played the video game version of Brother Bear on the PC, which that was a lot more funner than watching the film itself. Or, obviously, of course, the Thomas and Friends PC CD-ROM game, specifically The Great Festival Adventure and Trouble on the Tracks. But if you grew up in the 90s and 2000s and played a game series from a company called Humongous Entertainment, you might know where I'm going with this, but not those iconic characters, of course. We're talking about like Putt Putt, Spy Fox, Freddy Fisher, Pajama Sam. But there is one franchise specifically that has been recently getting a lot of popularity again, especially on social media, especially when we're not also potentially getting an animated special, but also probably new games of these iconic characters. And I am, of course, talking about the Backyard Sports series. Now, for those who don't know, Backyard Sports was basically a little big franchise where you have a variety cast of kids play these iconic, sports that you would do, like, outside, like baseball, football, soccer, basketball, hockey, you name it. And recently, Mega Cat Studios had recently bought that franchise and had been re-releasing some of the classic games courtesy of either like on Steam or on mobile devices, and they were planning to really build up the franchise to a big massive reboot, or revival of making an animated special, of course, as I mentioned, and maybe new games in the near future, like a lot of brand new games, like a new version of baseball or football or stuff like that. So, which one of these kids that I would suggest to become a giant balloon? And that would be the unofficial mascot of the Backyard Sports series, the secret weapon himself, Pablo Sanchez. I mean, how I can see Pablo being a novelty balloon with kind of like a mini float for the Backyard Sports series where some of the iconic characters, maybe like in a mascot costume form, would be on the float. And then you would have the secret weapon himself being a giant balloon. Whether it be a version of him holding a baseball bat or with him carrying a football or kicking a soccer ball or holding a basketball or in a hockey outfit. I could see more likely a baseball version of him because Backyard Baseball was the one that started the entire franchise. So you can imagine like the secret weapon himself getting ready to swing a home run since he's considered like the secret weapon since he can really play well in any game he plays, whether it be on baseball or football, which were the two games I played. So yeah, I think Pablo Sanchez would be a great candidate for a balloon if Mega Cat Studios want to promote the Backyard Sports series to the public, and a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia with these characters, but getting to see a character that a lot of adults that played hate him as a kid being a balloon in the Macy's parade. Now, before I get into my number one pick, I do want to have one honorable mention that I would like to bring up. Because, excuse me, this one could actually be a possibility that this could actually happen for the 100th parade this year. And I kind of had mentioned this, I think, not in a video, but some sort of a community thing I've done or something like that. But, because this seems like a pretty great idea at glance, especially for the 100th anniversary. So this is like an original Macy's Parade character that obviously has a lot of different variations if you get the idea where I'm going with this. Because this character had a bit of a history throughout the 40s, where he had multiple changes in his outfit. So And obviously, through many anniversaries, he got a couple of recreations. His fireman outfit was recreated in 1996 for the 70th parade. His police officer outfit was recreated in 2011 for the 85th parade. The baseball outfit was recreated in 2017 for the anniversary of Miracle on 34th Street. And I would love to see, for the 100th parade, I would love to see Macy's Parade Studio recreate the one that started it all, a recreation of the original Harold the Clown balloon. So yeah, this Harold the Clown balloon, yeah. I would be very interested if Macy's in their parade studio would actually recreate the original Harold the Clown balloon in honor for the 100th anniversary. I mean, they had recreated the last three versions, so why not recreate the one that started it all? And in fact, if they do that, I would love to see for the 100th parade, like, all four of the recreations of Harold all together in one lineup. Like, you have the clown recreation at the front, then the baseball recreation, then the police officer recreation, and then the fireman recreation. And then it's just going to be all Harolds around throughout, almost like a little bit of a gap, I would say, almost like throughout the 2.5 mile route. But just having all four of them lined up together, that just shows how much they're honoring the anniversary, of course. I mean, they kind of did a new recreation of Frida the Dachshund and two iconic fishes in an homage to the original flying fish balloon. So it would make sense for them to recreate Harold the Clown for the 100th anniversary. Okay, so for my number one pick, this one was pretty easy for me because of what I would love to see the most as a giant balloon in the Macy's Parade, my biggest wish list in general. And this is not a character, to be precise. This is multiple characters. And the reason I chose these characters as the number one pick specifically, they make the most sense to me. Because you would have thought a lot of these iconic characters, like advertising icon characters to be precise, would be giant balloons. But the only time we ever seen like this type of food brand ever have their mascots be giant balloons is just, you could technically say a Lionhearted and a bee. That's it. Basically, my number one pick is any cereal mascot. I'm serious, folks. I think any cereal mascot makes the most sense to me to be a giant balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The only ones we've ever gotten were technically Linus Lionhearted, even though he kind of started in the show, and the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, which that was actually the second episode of my original Macy's Parade Balloon series, and I kind of talked about that in the end of that episode about, like, what cereal mascots you would love to see as a giant balloon. And that's where that kind of the idea comes into, not really on this video, but also what I would love to see the most. I mean, because, as I said, they make the most sense. I mean, who would love to see a giant balloon of some of your iconic cereal mascots that you watched on television or ate their cereals for any different generations? I mean, who would love to see a balloon on Tony the Tiger, the Trix Rabbit, Lucky, Toucan Sam, Sunny, Snack, Crackle, and Pop, the Cookie Crisp Wolf, the monster cereals, Count Chocula, Boo Berry, and Frankenberry. I mean, we just saw those cereal mascots get Jim Henson-style puppets. I forget that frog, some sort of guy. I forgot who he was, but, like, that one, Captain Crunch, Mr. Sun of the Raisin cereal, I forgot what it was called. But yeah, like, Sugar Bear, even though he also technically started in Linus Lionhearted. But yeah, like, all those cereal mascots really make a lot of sense and creative idea designs for a balloon. Like imagine, like, the Trix Rabbit kind of almost being a similar design to the Scrat and his acorn balloon, where he's trying to snatch a bowl or a box of Trix cereal, or even Trix yogurt or something like that. Lucky, like, holding, like, a bunch of Lucky Charms around him, like whether it be the balloon or the shamrock or the shooting star, like, or just have him all around his waist or something like that, or just having, like, him kind of similar to the fifth version of Ronald, where he's holding one of the Lucky Charms. Or you can have Sunny just go almost like, I don't know, like a weird way of, like, a tornado balloon, but you could just see his head and kind of like in the center of it, and like almost a variety of his wings and his feet, but just in different locations of the balloon, just how Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs he is. Or I don't know how we would do Snack, Crackle, and Pop or something like that. Toucan Sam could just maybe just be flying, or just having like his eyes closed of him just following the smelling taste of Fruit Loop cereal or something like that. Or Tony the Tiger, obviously, with this kind of great, like his great finger, of course, that he does, like with an iconic pose or something like that, even though he's a very long character, so you would have to reduce his size, of course. But yeah, I mean, they make the most sense, and I will love to see a lot. The Honey Nut Cheerios Bee is kind of technically the only true cereal mascot, if you're not counting Linus the Lionhearted, that has been a balloon in the Macy's parade. And he only lasted for 3 years. So, like, if General Mills wants to bring Buzz Bee back, I don't think they would not be able to do the original one, because I know that it got repainted in 2001. I didn't even know the Braid Studio still has the fabric of the original balloon. But if they bring it back, maybe he would do a new balloon. But any cereal mascot that has yet to be a balloon, as I mentioned, would be a fantastic idea. I mean, some of the kids probably would have had, like, Lucky Charms or Frosted Flakes or Trix or Cookie Crisps or maybe even Count Chocula for breakfast that morning before they headed to the parade ground, unless they had a special breakfast at their hotels, of course. But yeah, they would really make the most sense to me, because I could just see that in them in the big skies and with some iconic music. Like, if you had the Tony the Tiger balloon going through Herald Square, you could almost have an homage to, like, the Hey Tony music from the 90s, or the Everywhere We Go, People Want to Know, like that, the music of that ad that was throughout the 2000s. Like, any of that would be fantastic, just to hear that as Tony's background music. But yeah, or just like Lucky Charms with the magically delicious thing, or just like, it's just like so amazing. And you can even like imagine the host just saying some of the iconic lines of these iconic mascots. Like, imagine Al Rooker saying he would be going Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs, or he would say they're great, or all of them saying tricks are for kids. That's the thing. That's the reason why I think the cereal mascots, or any of them, is my biggest wish list for it to be a giant balloon in the Macy's parade. Any of them, and would make the most sense to me. So if I would want to see who would be my biggest wish list for to be a giant Macy's parade balloon, any cereal mascot. So that kind of wraps up this unique video. So if you're new to the channel, obviously you can hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what your favorite characters that you want to see as giant balloons in the Macy's parade. Not like new versions of current characters, but characters that you are admiring still to this day, that are still relevant in today's pages, that would make sense to become a giant balloon. I mean, everyone was happy when Mario got that last year, so I want to see if any of these 8, especially any cereal mascot, would make sense to become a giant balloon. So keep in mind, this is also more like a prediction status, or like a big wish list thing. Like, I know that most of these are not going to happen, or in the years down the road, because obviously we don't know who will be joining the roster for the 100th parade, especially it's going to be a big one. But we don't even know yet the roster yet, because we might not know that till September and October, especially in October, I would say. So, but these 8 characters would really make sense, especially those cereal mascot characters. So I will be back for another Macy's Parade video on that what if video, if I would choose who to perform for the 100th parade. So let me know in the comments, what are your characters?